Hello, 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 and welcome home. I hope you are having a great week, and I'm glad to see you here for this home visit, house call, if you will. We are here, we are in the living room of this house, more specifically on the floor. I'm trying out a new way of filming. We're gonna see who knows if it's gonna be here next week. But the point is, Wednesday film talks, baby. You know what this movie is? The Devil All the Time. Netflix movie came out on Friday, and the movie is, just for warning, this is a spoiler review of The Devil All the Time. If you don't want to be spoiled, you just want to know a bit about the movie, what you're getting yourself into, link in the description for a non-spoiler review. But yes, so The Devil All the Time is a movie about a bunch of sinister characters who converge around these two towns, and we follow the main, I guess the main character of the main story would be Arvin. So we follow this boy Arvin and his life and his journey, his life and him trying to protect the people he cares about from all these sinister peoples and just all the bad stuff that's going on in his town. So this really is a movie about how people's lives are interconnected in the smallest and in the biggest ways, and how one event can snowball into how many other. And it's very interesting. I love the interconnectedness of it because I think it is like real life. You know, whether we realize it or not, the things we do and the people we meet, it's just one big spider web growing out, but at the end of the day, still all connected. So yeah, so that being said, there was a lot kind of plot-wise, because even though Arvin is the main character, there are still like, I think 6 other people's, I think minimum 6, I think, other people's stories that we learn about and follow throughout this movie. It's a 2-hour movie, so there's a lot that we kind of go through, and there are some time skips between like the past, present, and future in the movie. So plot-wise, it's a pretty heavy one, that's for sure. So for this video, plots and themes kind of are gonna take up a big portion of it because I did have a lot to talk about, and there are a lot you can find in this movie, but I just picked the ones that stood out to me the most and the ones that I felt were more interesting. So let me know in the comments, like, did you see the ones that I saw? Are there any I missed? You know, what ones stuck out to you? I'm really interested to know. We can get a little discussion going. But yeah, so plots and themes that I found, religion obviously would be a big one. You know, this the 2 towns that this movie takes place in it's West Virginia, like 1957, post World War II. So Catholicism, like, I think Christianity plays a big part in this movie. So yeah, that is, I guess, an overarching theme, and I kind of broke it down into like 3 sub ones that I felt represented that theme of Christianity the most throughout this movie. So the first one would be the theme of sacrifice, you know. So sacrifice is kind of like giving up something else or something that you really want, kind of for someone or something else, you know, or letting it go because you have to in order to do something, that kind of thing. So I'm just gonna say, like, some of the plots and the things that I'm going to explain high-key messed up, but just roll with it. Okay, so sacrifice, the idea of, especially sacrifice in religion or Christianity, the idea that God will call upon you to prove yourself, that he will call upon you to sacrifice something to prove your faith to him, is something that we definitely see in this movie. And I wouldn't call myself a Christian, but I did grow up in a Christian home. I went to a Catholic school for elementary school and high school, so I know a little bit about it. But yeah, so there is a story, I think it was Abraham, I honestly can't remember. Honestly, if I get anything wrong involving the Bible, don't at me. It's been a while, okay? It's been a hot minute. But the point is, there's a story where God calls someone from the Bible to go up a mountain and kill his son because God just wants him to prove his faith, wants this guy to know that he trusts God so much that he knows if God is asking him to kill his son, then it's what's right, it's what God has in mind for him, it's going to be what's best for him and his son at the end of the day, right? So he goes up this mountain, he tricked his son, he said, I have a goat, let's go kill this goat, and the kid's like, yeah, sure, okay. And yeah, so they get up there and this guy's about to kill his son, and then God stops him and is like, no, you don't have to do that. I just wanted to know, you know, I just wanted to see if you would just know that you are about to, you really do believe in me that much. And then I think his reward was like his bloodline would have like, be like healthy or something like that. I can't remember. But the point is, like, me personally, it just doesn't sit right with me. I know like the Bible isn't something you aren't supposed to take literally, but we also can't pretend the influence that that text has on the religion and the people who read it, regardless if you're taking it word by word or not. And at the end of the day, I think if this guy had said, oh, God called me to go kill my son, okay, all right. But if it had been anybody else, if he's like, yeah, my friend Joe asked me to go kill my son, so I'm gonna prove it, I'm gonna go do it to prove to Joe that I believe and trust in him, he would have been like, hold the phone, like this is messed up, you know what I'm saying? So for me, I was just finding it interesting that because it was God, everybody was like, yeah, this is good, this is cool, this is fine. So that kind of whole idea of God calling you to do some interesting things to prove your faith to him is something that we see in the movie, and we see it with these two characters, Roy and Helen. So Roy is a preacher in the story, and he comes into town and his whole stick is that he dumps spiders on himself because he's afraid of them, but he does it to prove that God will protect him from these spiders, to prove his faith. But one day one of the spiders like bites his cheek and he swells up and he like has a crisis in faith basically, and he's like, well, if God let the spider bit me, like I think he thought that God was calling on him to prove his faith again, that God was testing him. So he like locks himself in a closet for a fortnight. I don't know how long that is, but it's a long time. It's a long time. Because in the movie they said he smelled bad, worse than a truck stop toilet. So, I mean, you have to be in a closet for a while to come out smelling like that, right? So the point is, he in the closet, you know, we hear him have this epiphany. We hear him be like, oh God, is that you? Like, oh, I'm not scared, I can, you know. So we know that he had this revelation from God. So he takes his wife Helen, is like, come on girl, let's go on this ride, right? And what he thought was that God was calling on him to kill his wife, so that, and then his reward would be that God was going to resurrect her. You know, it's kind of a bit of an Abraham story. God was like, just do it, I just want to see you, just go. And that's what he did. He killed his wife and then sat there like trying to resurrect her. It was a very hard scene to watch. So, and honestly, like a lot of female deaths, so if that's like not chill, like I'll talk about that later on, but that in itself is a whole something. But the point is, it's just like that idea that, I mean, to kill your own wife because you think that God wants you to. And you know what? This isn't like the Abraham story. We don't 100% know that God called him to do it. We can already tell that maybe this man has a few screws loose given the fact that he's going to dump spiders on himself. But again, it's just the fact that he's doing this in the name of religion to prove himself to God that I find quite interesting, you know, because God in himself, like God trying to prove yourself to him, to act in his name, or to kind of do right by him, is what drives like a lot of the characters in this movie. So I mean, to prove yourself to him is one of the ways, you know. And we also see that when Arvin, our main character, his mom got cancer, so his dad in his desperation killed Arvin's dog and nailed him to the cross like they did with Jesus as a sacrifice, because, you know, when he first found out his wife had cancer, he was praying on it, and he went to a bar, was being depressed, and he was like, you know what, oftentimes, you know, God calls on people to test their faith. So he thought that if he killed this dog that they loved, you know, he sacrificed that dog, he sacrificed his love for that dog, it would be enough to save his wife. And it wasn't the wife still died, but again, it's just that idea that you can give a life for a life, that kind of thing. You know, that idea of trying to appease God in hopes that he will spare your wife was what was driving him to do this. So it was very interesting to see. Another way we saw religion is kind of like divine will versus just kind of like dumb luck. You know, divine will being like it's in Jesus's plan and he has it all laid out, or sorry, God's plan and he has it all laid out, versus dumb luck where it's just like whatever happens, there's no rhyme or reason to it. And I think with the way this movie is so like interconnected and everything is kind of like a snowball effect, because A person met B person, this down the line ended up happening to C person, like that kind of thing. So, you know, it does make you wonder like how much of this, I mean, in the movie at the beginning there was a narrator through this movie, so he said that it was a bit of both given how everything turned out, but it's kind of like, well, how do you know? How do you know what was a dumb luck part? How do you know what was a divine will part? You know, we have certain characters who say things like, oh, I mean, it was God's will or whatever that this person showed up in town, or by God's grace this person showed up in town. But then this person ends up going off to do like some messed up things to other people. So it's kind of like, okay, but if this was God's will, like why though? Like, dude, I don't know, you know what I'm saying? Like it makes you kind of question everything and question God's role in all of this. And you know, like I don't know, religion is just complicated like that, you know. It just, and I think for me this movie like really kind of tackled that between like, because again, like a lot of the stories that happen are messed up. So if this is divine will, well then like how does God remedy that? If he's supposed to be an all loving, all nurturing kind of character, then like why are these people getting murdered out here? You know, why is it divine will that these people go off and be serial killers? You know, but if it's just dumb luck, then it's kind of like, well, is anybody responsible for it if that's just the way the cookie crumbles? You know, but even that in itself raises questions, because it's like, I feel like as humans we like to have reasons for things and we like to have an order to things. So if shit just happened for no reason, I like it can be hard to kind of just comprehend that it's just, life is what it is, and you know, there's no reason for it. People just become serial killers for no reason. We don't know why. That's just how life is just gonna play out. That's that, you know. So that I thought was very interesting, you know, because like there are a lot of scenes where it's like we have an example. I'll give you a specific example. So in the movie Arvin, he kind of grew up with his they're basically sisters, brother and sisters, but they're not by blood. So remember how I told you about Helen and Roy? Well, they had a baby. So before they go off on this fateful drive where Roy ends up killing Helen decided to drop his daughter, their daughter off at a close family friend. That close family friend being Willard's mom, so Arvin's grandma. So obviously they grew up together because Helen doesn't have any parents and Arvin's parents are dead. So they grew up together, right? So they always look at each other like brother and sister. So because like Lenora is very, she's very religious, like just like her mom, and like pious, like praying all the time. So obviously an easy target for kids because kids are mean. So basically there's these three guys specifically that like to pick on Lenora. And Arvin, was like, you know what, I've had it up to here, these boys are about to get it. So every day like Lenora goes and like prays at her mother's grave, that kind of thing. So and Arvin always goes with her, always, except for the one day that he didn't, right? So the one day that he didn't go with Lenora ends up being I don't know how to word this, but like Lenora ends up basically sleeping with the pastor, the new pastor in that town. It's not Roy, he was just a guest and whatever, but basically our new pastor, it was Robert Patterson, by the way. It was weird to see him in that role. Like he did it so well and I hated him for it because the pastor was obviously a all-around shitty guy. So I was like, ooh, Rob, why? Why? But yeah, so Lenora, I mean, the pastor took advantage of her, point blank, period. You know, it starts raining. She goes inside the church for cover and the pastor's like, oh, you look sad. What's wrong? Here, let me comfort you. Let me drive you to this spot where I like to pray. Oh, have you considered like showing yourself to God? Like how he made his first children, i.e. they were naked in the Garden of Eve, his first children. So yeah, so he ends up like saying to her like, oh, I mean, showing to yourself to God, i.e. getting naked and doing with me, that takes courage, that takes strength. This is you giving yourself to God fully by giving yourself to me. So obviously we can tell that the pastor is beyond a piece of work, you know, but where was Arvin, you ask? Why didn't he go with her like he did every time? Well, that's because he was there beating the fuck out of the 3 boys that are always like picking and teasing on Lenora. And you might ask yourself, like, where did he learn to do that? Why would he do that? Well, and here's the snowball effect. He did that because when he was growing up, he was the only kid in the town that wasn't related to somebody, so kids picked on him. Why? Because kids are mean, okay? So his dad was like, listen, the next time they start something, like, you need to finish it. Like, you can't just let them walk all over you. That was the dad's advice to him, so they go off to pray about it. And while they're in like because the dad didn't go to church anymore, he saw some messed up stuff in the war. So he saw a dead Marine pinned to the cross like Jesus. Hence why he did that with the dog, okay? Snowball, all connected. So the point is, he didn't really like seeing crosses or being in church like that. But when he met Arvin's mom and they moved away from the town that he grew up in, he basically made his own kind of church and just made 2 pieces of wood in a cross and just had it in like the woods, like behind their house. So they're out there praying, and obviously it wasn't just Arvin who was having trouble. Like, the whole town didn't really like the family because, like, they, small town, they're new, and again, they weren't related to anyone, so they were viewed as outsiders. So the 2 other guys from the town come by and start talking crap about, how they should go visit, Willard's wife, because he's out here praying with his son and that she'll probably give up a piece of it to them. So obviously he was pissed off, but he finished praying, and later on we see him take Arvin. He says, oh honey, don't worry, BRB, you're just gonna go get some gas. But in reality, he drives down to where those guys live and he beats the fuck out of them. And he gets back in the truck and he turns to Arvin and he's like, that's what I meant. When I told you, when those guys start something and you finish it, this is what I meant. So that learned behavior, right? So again, it snowballed. Arvin learned that shit from his dad. He took that and was like, oh, my dad did this to protect my mom, I'm gonna do this to protect Lenora. So Lenora was by herself, taken advantage by that pastor. Because she was taken advantage by that pastor, she ended up getting pregnant. She went back to the pastor, and the pastor was like, just get rid of the fucking baby, because if you don't, you're gonna end up a whore mother. This is what he said. You're gonna end up a whore mother with a bastard son, and the woman who raised you is gonna be so ashamed, like the grandma basically, is gonna be so ashamed of you that she'll die. Like, she won't be able to handle it. So Lenora believes him and she goes to commit suicide. But while she's doing it, she thinks about it and she's like, you know what, like, he lied. My baby will be fine. She won't be upset with me. She won't be ashamed. So she had a moment of clarity and was like, the pastor is trying to manipulate me. It's not the truth. But obviously, as she's going to step down off the bucket, she slips. So she ends up dying anyways. Right? So I did all that. I explained all that just to say, 1, we have a female death here. A second one, we're going to talk about that later. But 2, the fact that, if Arvin hadn't left her alone, could this have happened anyways? Maybe. But the thing is, we don't know. If Arvin hadn't left her alone, would he have been there to stop them ever meeting? If he hadn't gone off to go fight those kids just like he had learned from his dad, would he have maybe found another way to deal with it so he wouldn't have had to leave her? Like, again, snowball effect, you have all these questions. And does it just come down to dumb luck? Or is it divine will? You know what I'm saying? Because another thing I find interesting is that when the pastor first showed up, we have Lenora saying that it was God's will that he ended up here. Or if it wasn't God's will, then this pastor wouldn't be here at this church. That kind of thing. So I find that very interesting. Like, why would it be God's will that all of those events happen so this girl ends up dead? I just don't know. I just don't know. Okay. Wow. We're going on. Okay, and I feel like last but not least, prayer. Prayer is something that a lot of, like, it takes up a good chunk of this movie. We see the reasons why people don't pray anymore, what causes them to start praying in the movie. The people who've always prayed and their outlook on life. So I find it very interesting, kind of like, we have the grandma who's kind of like, not necessarily she's a happier character in the story, and you can tell that she's always been a religious woman, prayed her whole life. We have the dad who was clearly troubled, who stopped praying because of what he saw on the cross with that Marine, but eventually he started again. And then we have Arvin, same thing, saw some messed up stuff and didn't pray till the end of the movie. We have Lenora, who prayed her whole life, and look at the things that happened to her. And that's something that Arvin even points out, that's like, you're doing all this praying, but what good is it doing you, because you're still out here getting bullied, right? So I just find it interesting the role that prayer plays in these people's lives, and kind of like the contrast and the similarities between the people who pray, the people who don't pray, the people who stopped and started, and what caused them to stop and start again. But again, I feel like we have like God being like a driving point in people's lives. You know, people pray to connect with God, you know, whether that's to make things right, you know, to atone for sins, just have somebody to talk to ask for forgiveness, to ask for help with something, you know, like asking to help cure your wife's cancer, or just seeing you're grateful for the things that you have in your life, that kind of thing. And I think the idea of trying to get right with God, or to ask God for help, or to feel close to God, is something that drives a lot of the characters in the movie. You know, the Carl guy, I can't even remember if I ever mentioned him, but basically Carl is another character that we meet. You know, when Willard first comes home from the war, he ends up in this diner where he meets the mother, Charlotte. And what happened was, he walks in, he's about to go ham. Willard walks up to his seat. Carl walks up to his seat. Carl's like, no, you take the seat, you're a serviceman. So because Carl gave up that seat, Charlotte ended up serving him. That's how they met. So Carl goes, he goes, sits in another spot, and that's when he meets Sandy, because that was her area to serve. And basically those two go off together to be serial killers. You know, they would basically, Sandy was an attractive girl, so they would use her as the bait to lure hitchhikers into their car and to not feel scared or have their guard up if it was just a lone man, maybe. And basically he would set up these scenes and like force them to like either sleep with his wife or like take pictures with her, and then he would kill them, and then they would take pictures with, like, she would take pictures with the dead bodies. And like, she was into it, you know. She that's a hard one. I wouldn't say she was being forced to do it at all. She really seemed to enjoy it. There was one scene where she was looking past the pictures with all the past victims they'd had, and she was smiling at those photos pretty fondly. I don't want to get too much into it, but yeah, the point is, like, you know, with Carl, like, they both go off and kill people, and for him, like, this goes back to prayer in the sense that, like, for him, this was the way that he could feel close to God, to anything, something close to God. That's the only way he could feel close to God. So that's why he did stuff like that. So again, it's that idea of God and wanting to be close to him, how kind of you would be through prayer. So in a sense, this could maybe be considered Carl's prayer, you know, doing, you know, in the presence of death, you know, when he creates the situations where death is present by obviously killing people. So I just found that very interesting, you know, the character motivations we see and how closely they are tied to and affected by religion, and the people's lives and how they are affected by religion. The next theme I found is good or bad person. Like, what makes a person good, what makes a person bad. You know, I think for me, Arvin is the best example of that in the movie, because like, he is a good kid, you know, like, he inherently doesn't have any bad qualities. He's not like the pastor. He's not out here like Carl and Sandy. You know, for the most part, he really is just trying to keep to himself, you know, and not let the people he cares about get bullied or pushed around or anything like that, you know. But we see him put into bad situations. In the movie, he even says, like, I'm not here because I have to. Oh no, I'm not killing because I want to, but because I have to. You know, all the stuff that happened with the pastor, I mean, nobody was gonna believe him. You know, I mean, like, we cannot deny the kind of invincibility that a lot of pastors had, especially in that kind of Bible Belt area post World War II. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, nobody was gonna touch the pastor, and you know, Lenora was dead, so there wasn't really his word against hers. And the thing is, the pastor was also doing that with other girls from the church. So Arvin kills him. He kills the pastor. Sandy and Carl end up picking him up, because when he's running away after he killed the pastor, his car breaks down, so they pick him up, and obviously Sandy and Carl are going to kill him, so he ends up killing them. So that was like a self-defense thing. But the point is, like, does the fact that he killed those people make him a bad person? Does that make him a good person? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think he's completely one or the other. You know, maybe you could call him a good person who's maybe done some bad things or been put in bad situations. But I think it was just very interesting, you know, because like, that, not necessarily good and evil, but that kind of morality type of thing. I think like there was people who were either 100% good, like we had Lenora, she would just be 100% good character, you know, she didn't do one thing that was bad. Then you have 100% bad characters like the pastor and Sandy and Carl, and then you have Arvin, who's kind of like walking the line in the middle, you know, because depending on how you view it, he would be considered a bad person because he still killed somebody. He's 3 people, 4 I think, or something like that. Even if some of them were in self-defense, some of them were for the idea of revenge and retribution, you know what I'm saying? And then last thing I find interesting is that, like, you know, a lot of times when we have somebody die and they're like, oh, I need to go get revenge, they kind of make it out to seem very badass. Like, take John Wick, you know, all this stuff happened, they killed his dog and he like suited up and went and did all this crazy shit. But for Arvin, like, it wasn't made to look cool. Like, he was literally shaking before when he tried to kill the pastor. After it happened, like, we saw him freaking out. Like, at the end of the day, he was just a scared kid, you know? And I think that was very interesting to kind of see the emotion behind it, that he wasn't a stone cold killer. Like, he couldn't just bop and be done with it. Like, he I don't necessarily think maybe well, in some of them he did try to like talk them down so he wouldn't have to do it. Like in Sandy's case, he didn't want to kill her, but she fired. They both fired at the same time. Sandy's gun happened to have blanks, so at the end of the day she didn't walk out of that one. You know what I'm saying? But I just I thought it was very interesting. Last but not least, I would say delusions. So delusions is a fixed false belief that conflict with reality. You know, we have Lenora believing that this pastor was sent from God. She felt that she even said in the movie that she thought that she could touch the love emanating from the pastor. We can tell that the pastor is not a loving man. And the thing is, Lenora also knew that because Lenora and like their whole family goes to church. Like, so like the Lenora, the grandma, Arvin, well, obviously they are a poor family. So the grandma, like when the pastor first came to town, they kind of had like a cookout, everybody bring a dish, a potluck. So the grandma brought like chicken livers. That's poor people food for West Virginia in 1957. And sorry, it wasn't 1957. But the point is, Virginia in the 1950s, liver is what poor people were eating. So, but that was the best she could do. So, and apparently she was a really good cook in the movie. They said that a lot of people knew her for her chef skills. So that's what she brought. She brought what she could. And the pastor went and made this whole sermon about, oh, you know what? Let me eat like the poor people today and eat these chicken livers so that some of the poor people here have a chance to eat the good meat that I was going to eat. But instead, I'm going to leave it for the poor people so they can eat like us rich people. And that was basically his whole sermon. And Lenora knew that. She saw that. So to me, that's like red flag number 1. You know what I'm saying? So the point is, like, she had this delusion, this belief in her head that she could trust this man. He was a good person, even though we as the audience saw the reality of that and knew that that wasn't true. But that's not the only case. You know, we see it with Roy thinking he could bring back his wife from the dead. Like, there was nothing to support that other than the fact that he just really believed in God. But you know what I'm saying? Is that a conflict in reality to believe in God? Or is it a conflict in reality to believe that God would bring back your dead wife, right? But like, he's done it before. Lazarus, you know what I'm saying? So if he could raise Lazarus from the dead, like, why not my wife? So I guess it's kind of like, depending on how much you read into that religion, that could be considered your reality. Especially if we are to believe that these stories happened, then we know to an extent it is a reality, right? So very interesting there. We have a delusion with the preacher. You know, he believed that he wasn't responsible for Lenora's death and it was her, that she was the crazy one. And the fact that he can sit up there and preach all those things, and I really feel like he's the type to believe that he thinks he's still going to get into heaven. So that in itself is very delusional. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think a delusion has played a lot of part, because I wouldn't call faith a delusion, but I guess like to the extent, the kind of like intense, like cultish way that some of them were taking their faith made it into a delusion. And that's why we had some of the instances that they've seen, or kind of believing that if they just repent for their sins that they get an all clear card, and you know, kind of doing a lot of like messed up things in the name of faith, like telling Lenora, oh, like share yourself with God, you know, this is you giving yourself up to God fully if you sleep with me here. That in itself is a delusion. You know what I'm saying? Just to like to do all this terrible shit in the guise of religion, to say it's for God, pretty fucking delusional to me. I don't know. And last but not least, the theme of death. I think it was there was a lot of death in this movie. I mean, whether it was the victims from the serial killing, the people that Arvin killed, there was this cop that was out here killing people. I didn't really talk about him. Honestly, I will say this, with Bo Decker, that's the cop's name, that was Sebastian Stan, I don't think I saw the point of his character. Like, I really think if he had been taken out, I don't think it would have made a difference in the story. Like, yeah, he did have some, like, he was the cop that was called to the scene when Arvin found his dad, like, dead because the dad committed suicide, and his sister was Sandy, right? So I guess, but honestly, I think compared to everything else, he contributed the least to the story, and I didn't really see why he was there. But that's not the point. Death, there was a lot of death, you know, the people Arvin killed, the people that died, like, we saw a lot of it with murder. We saw 2 suicides and 1 kind of like nobody's at fault death, which would be cancer. Like, that's a sickness. Like, unless we're calling divine plan here, nobody causes cancer, right? But I guess God really isn't a person, but the point is that's still a thing causing it. So yeah, I just think there was like so much of it, and I think that's interesting because, again, like, I mean, death is when the time you're supposed to meet your maker, right? Like, that's when you finally go to see God and face your judgment and see if you're going upstairs or downstairs. So I found that to be very interesting. But honestly, for me, what stuck out most to me about death is the amount of female characters that died here. And like, like, just the fact that we had 3 girls who died, all to further male plot points. Like, their deaths were catalyst for the plot of the other guy characters, and that's what bugged me the most about it. You know, we have Lenora, she died, and because she died, that's what caused Arvin to go off and kill the pastor and end up meeting Sandy and Carl and killing them and all that. But it's like, at the end of the day, I'm not saying her death didn't have her own meaning. You know, it was sad to see a character like her die, especially when it was an accident. She realized that she didn't have to kill herself. But that's the point. They didn't have to kill her. Just the fact that she even tried, that could have been enough for Arvin. If he was willing to go that far, if he was willing to beat up those bullies, he beat one of them with a tire iron. So if he was about to go that hard just because they bullied her, what do you think he was gonna do if the pastor made her think that she almost killed herself? So there was no reason for her to die. I think her almost doing it would have been enough given how he had acted in the past. So I think her death in that sense was pointless. It was just so Arvin had a reason that he didn't really even need, because attempt would have been enough for him to still go kill the pastor. I don't know. And if anything, it would have made it more interesting, because now he did that. He has to leave behind Lenora. She has to deal with, you know what I'm saying? It could have been more interesting. We have Charlotte dying. That's the wife. She died of cancer and the dad killed himself. Like, that was a catalyst. That was why the dad killed himself, because the wife died. And you know what? For what? You know, I get that, like, both parents had to die for, like, Arvin's story, but at the end of the day, it's still a female character dying to further a male's plot, to further his story. And then again, we have Helen murdered to further Roy's story. You know what I'm saying? We didn't really get to learn that much about her. We just knew that she was religious, her family died of fire, and she ended up, you know, like, she didn't do much for the story. Like, she was just there to be killed by Roy to give more to Roy's story, you know, and so that Lenora could end up as an orphan. But still, like, there's just something that doesn't feel right to me about, you know, the harm or death of female characters, because we see that so much, you know, almost every action star, his wife is dead, dead family, dead daughter. Like, it's always just a dead woman that is causing a man to do something that is the plot point, the plot catalyst for a man's story. And that just doesn't sit right with me. You know what I'm saying? Like I said before, Lenora did not have to kill herself in order to push Arvin's story farther. It didn't even have to happen. So at the end of the day, it's just pointless death, and you have to wonder, like, I mean, let's not even pretend like we know how women have been treated throughout history. So this is just another facet for that. This is just another, you know, way that we see misogyny today. You know what I'm saying? So that's something that I just didn't like about the movie. That's the only thing. Well, not the only thing, but that's just one thing that really stuck out to me about the deaths in this movie, you know. Not all of them were female, but just the fact that 3 of them were, especially people who were important to the plot, you know. I don't know. And one thing I also found annoying is Sandy. With her character, we didn't really find out why she was doing what she did, you know. Like, we know why Carl was killing them, to feel closer to God, but I just feel like the fact that they didn't give the time, like, I mean, girl just could have been crazy, but I doubt it. She clearly had a conscience because she was reporting the bodies and where to find them so that families would at least know what had happened to their kids. But it's just like very, I mean, why not explore it more? I just don't know. I felt like her backstory and the reason she was out here just participating in killing these people wasn't given much thought. At least that's what I felt about it. And again, I find it interesting that the male character is doing this. We hear exactly why he's doing it. We know why he's doing it. But for Sandy, it's left a mystery. So I thought that was kind of like, come on. I know you can write it. If you can write one for Carl, you can write one for Sandy. So, I mean, why not give her one? I don't know. Yeah, so I spent quite a bit of time talking about plot and themes. We're probably like already at the 30-minute mark or some shit. So I'm about to speed through the other ones. Yeah, characters, I don't really want to talk too much about individual characters because like there's not much. Like, for what I talked about like the themes, that pretty much covered the characters and why they were doing what they were doing, so there's not much to say there. Yeah, for the music, there was a lot. I liked it. I think it fit. I didn't really pay, it wasn't like a soundtrack like in something like Tenet or something like that, but a lot of them were like religious theme songs, and a lot of them had to do with what was going on, like that whole Blood of the Lamb song, like that kind of thing. So I think it fit for the movie and definitely helped create that kind of eerie scene, you know. And overall, I feel like 1950s music is a bop, so I liked it. I would say, like, I don't know how to I would say the sets, I liked it. I don't know how much work went into like making it, like how much of it is CG and how much of it is physical buildings, but it really does look like rundown West Virginia towns in like post World War II. The cars were great, the outfits, yeah, so settings, I liked it. I think they really did a good job with it. I think like camera work, I guess this counts as camera work, but or just editing maybe, but just what I'm trying to talk about, I don't know what you would call this, but just the fact that there was like, I loved how the movie was put together. Certain things would happen and then the camera would be panning up to look at the sky, so the tree reaching up into heavens. Where's God? In the sky, up in heaven. You know, a lot of people say that nature is, you know, God's work. That's where a lot of people feel closest to God, is when they're in nature, because that's like, I don't know, purest form, like that kind of thing. So I just love the way that they mixed in the imagery of nature, especially the scenes where it's like the camera pointed right up at the sky, right up to heaven, if you will, and how they mixed in, how they happened, how you saw those shots before certain events, after certain events. Like, I don't know, it just helped to create a really good vibe in the movie, and just to drive home the point that God is important in this movie. Christianity was an important theme in this movie. So I like that. One thing I'll say about lighting, bruh, just because it's dark in the movie doesn't mean we, the audience, shouldn't be able to see. Like, there were some parts where I had no idea what was going on. I couldn't tell where they were, if they were picking things up, putting them down. Like, it was just, I mean, maybe it could have been my whack ass TV, who knows. But I mean, if anyone else experienced this at home on their computer or TV, just let me know, because like, I think, I mean, I'm not a lighting expert, I don't know, but I just feel like there's a way to make a scene look dark so we can tell that it's nighttime or the lights are off without the audience not being able to see. So that's the only thing else I would say about that movie. Extra things I liked the costumes. I love the dress that a lot of people had on. Like, I feel like a lot of 1950s clothes are very cute. I love the narrator. The guy who wrote the books, is based off a book, did the narrating for the movie. I love narrators. I think it's interesting. It added something to the story and helped you follow the plot line and helped to connect little things. And he had his own little sarcastic comments in there too, so that was interesting. I think that's it. Yeah, that's the extra bits that I liked. So yeah, that was The Devil All the Time. Let me know again, like, about the themes. How did you feel about the lighting? And if you notice the fact of how many women died to further like male plot points, you know, am I reading into it too much? Personally, I don't think I am. You know, I see this shit all the time and I'm just like, guys, come on, like, we can do better. Like, 2020, damn. And last but not least, I will say, what a weird cast. You have the guy who did It, two Marvel people, and then oh, who else? I can't even remember, but the point is, I just would have never expected these guys to be all in a cast together. That's all I'm saying. It was interesting to see. And the accents, I know half those people are not talking out here. Oh, and Robert from, so weird. But the point is, I think the accents, like, where did they get those? Robert was out here being like, delusions. That scene, I replayed that scene 6 times. The way he yells it cracks me up. And it'll be like, ew, I know about sinners, or something like that. Like, I don't know if that's how they talk in West Virginia, but damn, it was funny. I can't. It didn't take away from the movie. Like, the accents weren't so bad that I couldn't watch the movie, but there were certain words where I was like, that don't sound right. That don't sound right. But I'm not from West Virginia. Like, maybe that's how you say hell. Ew, I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, that's my stomach grumbling because I'm hungry. Yeah, I literally only have it written for like a couple of them because I ran out of space. Like, I wrote so much stuff and I didn't want the video to be too long, but it turned out too long. Well, not too long, but it turned out very long in general. So yeah. Oh, if I miss anything, too bad, because it's my house. I can do what I want and we know that. I will see you guys on Friday for another house visit. We're going to be more professional in the office, the home office. All right, so have a great week. Try and survive without me until Friday, and I will see you guys then. Bye.